talk UConn, Greer. Let's talk UConn. I mean, I'm just put it frankly.
I think the last time I was on here, what did I tell you?
It was.
I think that was the last time I was here. I told you this is pre-Tennessee, but I told you that I felt like we were kind of getting that old thing back a little bit.
Yeah, right? You are right. I do recall. Yeah.
And was I ready to jump after the Tennessee game? Absolutely.
Well, I believe it.
Was I ready to jump? I was because we saw it. It was ugly. It was brutal. But what's Sunday? They pulled me back.
Belt to ass.
Me back from the ledge. Okay,
belt
with
to
the belt.
ass.
They looped the belt around me. They looped the belt around me and pulled me back to safety. 29-point smackdown.
I mean,
and
crazy.
After, I think the game was at like 13-9 at one point. And after that, it wasn't ever close again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously, incredibly encouraged by the win, and incredibly encouraged by the timing of the win too. Right?
Needed it.
Exactly. Yes. I saw a tweet that said if you would have told UConn fans that we would lose against Notre Dame, we would lose against USC, we would lose against Tennessee, and it would take all of that, but we could get the dub against South Carolina, we would take it. And they didn't lie.
That's crazy. Like that is.
It is
like,
crazy.
The history that
but
goes
you have
into
to
that.
realize that South Carolina has been beating our heads.
Oh yeah, it's been bad.
You know what I'm saying? So going back to Paige's sophomore year, right? It's been very nasty. I was in Minnesota when we lost in the national championship to South Carolina, and none of those games had been particularly close.
Yeah.
And so it was starting to feel like, I don't know if we could ever recapture the magic and beat a great team on their home floor.
Right. I mean, look, this game was so rough that this is how Shawnee entered the postgame show. I mean,
I wish I would have been here for that.
Oh man, I was literally watching as I was waiting for Kim Mulkey to come to the press conference. Like I literally had it on my computer. I was. I mean, again, just complete. So here's the thing. Here's where I was kind of standing with it. To your point, when it comes to the timing of the win, like I was getting ready to question legitimately, like, does UConn have a hosting resume? Had they lost this game after losing Tennessee? Obviously, that is solidified now, no question. And the thing that's so interesting about this is that it's never been a question of the talent on this UConn roster. It's literally just like hasn't worked so far this season in a way where everyone is truly functioning. Because, like, I mean, we've seen the sparks of old Azzi. And like we saw it the third quarter against Ole Miss. We've seen it recently in the Big East. But to do it in this game where she outscores the entire South Carolina starting lineup, which we'll talk on the South Carolina side too, but to focus on that, and you allow Paige to facilitate. Like you don't even have to ask, you don't even pose the question of, oh, is Paige going to flip the switch? Because truly everyone around her is handling business, and that's just not something that UConn has been able to have really at much of. Like Sarah Strong has obviously been phenomenal. But like she's kind of been the only other consistent piece outside of Paige. And to get a game like this from everyone, like across the board, and even it's not about scoring a ton, but getting 9 from Ashlyn Shea, getting 10 from Caitlin Shea, like it's just kind of it adds up very quickly. And to think that UConn's
87 American points on South Carolina.
Man, on their home floor. Like, and to say, like, if I told you going into this that your depth would outperform South Carolina's depth, that doesn't add up. Like in the terms of the entire box score team sheet, that's not what you expect, right? But
if you would have told me that we out rebound Sam,
and not just out rebound, 19 rebounds with 15 offensive rebounds. Like it was like not even close. So I mean, you mentioned it now. We'll talk Final Four after, but just kind of to hone in on this game, like So you officially feel like this is the corner turn? Because I think that's the question now. It's like, okay,
This
it's
is the
like
what? Sorry.
like the corner turn for the
Oh yeah,
UConn team.
absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. It's gonna be pre and post South Carolina game. Like that's the tale of the 2 seasons. Yeah, we at no point during the season. I think back to late December 21st when we played South Carolina. SC, Southern Cal in Hartford, and being down early, playing a phenomenal third quarter to get back in it, right? And making the run. But then what happens, right? Like we don't realize that we have enough time to like actually call a timeout, run a play with 10
weird things.
Yeah. What I saw Sunday was just total, like the entire team was locked in. Cause like, just to keep it a buck, like there's been questions about like Gino. Like obviously he can still get the players, right? This team has, 3 number 1 players in the high school class, and Paige, Azzi, and Sarah, but like, can you still coach them with the same level of fire that you have when you've had similar rosters, right? And so like Sunday for me, there we messed up on some 3-point like screen coverages.
Yeah.
That free Tahina Pow up for a wide open 3 if we went under. And he was losing his mind on the sideline, right? But what I saw was like, okay, when he would typically go to the huddle to chew us out, Jamel Elliott, assistant coach, grabs him, and I don't know what she says in that moment, but then he goes to do the interview with Holly, and there was just, I just have not seen everybody like that bought in, that locked into like, let's not key in on like the 2 things that we did poorly, and like, no, how can we like keep the offense flowing? How can we like make little tweaks and adjustments on defense so that like even Caroline Ducharme was up off the bench in that missed screen coverage. Like that is what I like to see, and that is like indicative of like that feeling I've been talking about, like of us kind of being back. Like I think with all the injuries and all of the adversity, like we had been kind of lulled into if we make it, we make it. You know what I mean? Tight time. And that's just, I know that's not the program that I have known to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so to recapture that and just have just complete buy-in up and down the sideline was like absolutely key on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this felt like the first time that we've seen this team play at a UConn standard, honestly. And like just like obviously that standard and that bar is so ridiculously high, and they've obviously won games and have played other teams close and whatnot. But like, this was the first time like true belt to ass
that you've really seen in your lifetime. That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty much. You
don't even know how shit used to be.
I really don't. Like one thing I did want to mention, like I want to talk South Carolina as well. But one point I did kind of want to kind of bridge the gap. Going into this game, the thing that I've been most excited for, like kind of headed into this matchup, honestly, was the idea of this is the first time we see Sarah Strong versus Joyce Edwards. And to me, like that, this is not a rivalry. Like the fan bases don't like each other, but like this is not a rivalry. And to me, like this South Carolina UConn matchup, I think it's the 2 standard bearers of women's basketball that have kind of matched up now. But like I don't have like the hate aspect to it. Do you agree with that? I'll start there. Do you agree with that? Like,
I think it's a rivalry.
Is it not?
It's not to the extent of like UConn, Tennessee,
right? And maybe that's because what I'm comparing it to is to other UConn
but no,
rivalries.
I do think it's a rivalry. It's the last. Now, for a few years now, has been the last really big non-conference matchup in the women's college basketball schedule. It's Dawn and Gino, like 2 of the last 3 national team coaches, right? And like they're the only ones that came from like college programs to coach the national team. In terms of getting the top recruiting classes, coming from high school to college, like I mentioned, Connecticut has, 2 and a possible number 1 recruit overall.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina also has, let's say, 1 in a possible, 2 in a in Raven Johnson and Joyce Edward. You know what I mean? So like, this was Sarah Strong was considering South Carolina for a good bit of her process last year before ultimately, winding it down to 3 schools. So yeah, no, I mean, and then, also going back to last year, right, when we absolutely got thumped on their court, and they ended by, the chance of we want Sarah to one of their most loud fans saying, basically acting like he didn't remember her name 3 weeks ago when it was time to big up Joyce and talk about the season that she was having. So yeah, no, I think it's a rivalry, not as storied as UT and Connecticut, but when those numbers come out for the ratings,
I'll be excited to see it. Yeah,
I'd be shocked if this isn't the new most watched game of the season.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
And we're saying that on the heels of the first installment of Battle of LA.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, LSU, Texas, who also played later on in that day. Like, I do think that this will be the number 1 most watched game this year.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Anyway,
and the reason I kind of brought up the rivalry aspect, which I'm not mad at that being called. I mean, like, you play every year at this point. Like, that is. I mean, that's the biggest thing to a rivalry is the fact you play every year. And when you're the 2 best teams, I'm not mad at it. But the reason I kind of brought up Sarah and Joyce is like, that's what feels like not even necessarily that it has to be like beef or anything, but that's the matchup that to me can elevate this like matchup of the teams and the programs is you actually, because now, I mean, like, because really this entire time, there really hasn't been like positionally, like it's been UConn versus South Carolina.
I agree.
And it's been like South Carolina's bigs versus UConn's guards, essentially. We now finally have the same class, the same position, going for the same, eventually, I believe, the National Player of the Year awards, like those type of like accolades they are going to be vying for those. And that to me feels like the matchup that like that is going to be the marquee.
2 players truly on the same timeline.
Yes. Yeah. Like that. And that to me is what can again, not that it has to be beef or anything, but like just from a pure marketing standpoint.
Sure it's not? I don't know. Joyce fouled Sarah.
I mean, look,
that little show. Look, I don't know.
You know me.
I love it.
I want to be mad if it was, but that to me, I think
Janet L. Alfie crossovers.
That was wicked. That was wicked. Like that to me, like I truly think like this. That's the matchup to me that can elevate this into, again, to your point, already like has all the it doesn't really have the history, honestly, to be a rivalry yet. Like in the way of the other ones that we're so accustomed to with UConn. But you finally have like the matchup now. Like we hear so much about, it's Paige versus Hannah, it's Paige versus Juju, like as these other big games over this last year or two. But when it's South Carolina, it's UConn versus South Carolina, and now going forward we have that matchup. But I do want to talk about South Carolina because this was weird from South Carolina in the sense of like, I mean, Dawn Staley herself graded this performance from an effort perspective an F. Like the things that you kind of just come to expect, frankly, whether it be from effort, from like all like the locked in aspect, like that comes with being a South Carolina, Dawn Staley, South Carolina team. A lot of that was missing in this. And frankly, my attention immediately goes to the seniority and the older players. And again, Azzi Fudd outscores your starting lineup. Like Joyce Edwards and Mylasia Fulwiley come off the bench and are your 2 leading scorers. The only other player in double figures was Pow Pow. Like, I mean, it was without saying, that's not good enough, right? And I don't know if it's like, to me personally, like I would love to see just Joyce. I mean, the tear that she's been on the past month,
yeah,
like however far back it goes, like has been ridiculous. And I do wonder. Obviously, we're very late in the game now, like from a season perspective, and I don't know how much you want stuff to ruffle. And obviously, you don't blow everything up off one game, and especially when you're South Carolina. But it something's not working, like at some level, and again, you don't want to panic or anything. I'm not pushing no panic button or anything, and I'm not saying, South Carolina's not a contender now, so leave it in the comments. But like, I'm interested. Like, what did you see in this from a South Carolina perspective? That like, do you like? I guess maybe more so like, what are you taking from South Carolina? Like, is this something you kind of just like kind of discard and you just keep it pushing, or do you feel like there's like legitimate dialogue needing to be had about potential changes, whether that be to the starting lineup or to the emphasis on different ways of playing?
I mean, I think the questions have been there all season long, if we're being honest, right? Even going back to their first loss against UCLA. And, is Dawn playing the lineup that's going to give her the best shot at winning?
Mm-hmm.
That's a legitimate conversation piece. And it has been all season long when you talk about Mylasia and Joyce coming off the bench for this Gamecock team. What I saw was a team that just offensively could not get anything going. UConn guarded them great in the half court, and then also really limited any transition opportunities as well.
Yeah.
They were super, super connected on defense, which led to a very, very disjointed version of the Gamecocks on offense. And, there's also Don was quoted saying something about like, we can't allow UConn to play pretty basketball, but like, I would like to, I wouldn't, but for the sake of fairness, I would like to envision a world where South Carolina also plays pretty basketball. Like,
yeah, I don't think it has to be
why do
either
we
or.
have to be, but I don't know. I feel like, they've had moments where they've scored 100 and stuff like that, but like, they are very adamant about being a defensive-minded team.
Mm-hmm.
But I still would like to see, outside of Joyce, offensively, it can get really unpredictable. Like, you don't know where does everybody else like to score? Where does everybody else? Where are their hot spots? You know what I mean? My laser's just making shit happen. That's
you know what
I'm saying?
Yeah.
But everybody else, I have an idea, sort of. Like, I know Tess is a 3-point shooter, but I also think she could be so much more than that.
Yes. She's probably the player I might like. Obviously, Joyce has been the one that's been like on the tear. Tessa legitimately might be the one where I'm like, she's obviously like didn't have like she goes 0 for 4 in this game in 19 minutes, but like generally speaking, Tessa's shown up a lot.
Yeah, and then
like, over her past over time in South Carolina so far. Like, I don't.
How about more or less what you're gonna get from her? You know what I mean? She's a deadly 3-point shooter. She might look to take you off the bounce a couple of times a game. But it's Raven Johnson. If she's not scoring and not distributing at a super high level, what are you getting for real? Bree Hall, amazing effort on defense, of course, usually guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. But what are we getting on the offensive end? The trade-offs are just, listen, I'm all right if they don't figure it out. I'm not going to cry or anything.
Yeah.
I'll be all right if they don't figure it out. But for the sake of the conversation, right? Yeah, it's been an ongoing thing, and there was no one Don could really look to. Maddie McDaniel did play well off the bench as well.
Yep.
But in terms of true experience, there was no one Don could turn to on that bench on Sunday and say I know what they're going to give me, and they're going to help us get back in this game.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm also at with it. Is there's really no safety net for South Carolina right now. And for the longest time, that's been being able to anchor down a defense. And again, I feel like when Ashton Watkins went down, they handled it very well early on. And I think in the game since the Texas loss and just in general, I think you've been able to, the cracks have kind of started to show more and more on the defense side of the ball, which again has been the backbone of South Carolina being able to be so dominant. Is they make life easier for themselves on the offensive side because of their defense. And so I'm very interested in seeing again the bounce back. You have 4 games left before the SEC tournament, and Arkansas at Vandy, which shout out Michaela Blakes.
Hmm.
Look, if you've been listening, you've been known. But that's
Right.
the National Freshman of the Year, and potentially we gotta start having for legitimate All-American dialogue about her and where she stands in that. Sarah Strong's been phenomenal, but what Michaela Blakes is doing is legitimately different.
Can I say something about
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Okay. So I've seen, and this is, I'm not gonna say this is every UConn fan, but I've seen enough like people trying to shit on what Michaela Blakes is doing, and I just don't know how you do it at this point. She's still shooting like 47% from the field as a guard.
It's insane.
As a guard who shoots as much as she does.
In the SEC, you're your main, like, come on, bro. Come on.
Like it's come on, like, and I've seen the advanced stats matched up against Sarah and all that, but like again, primary option, they know it's coming to her, and she's delivering anyway. Okay. Also, I feel like I had the same message for South Carolina fans when they had still only lost one game and UCLA's schedule was like, yeah, at best. South Carolina had some really good wins. Like, is this not about championships? And to me, the same thing applies for Sarah Strong. Could she miss out on National Freshman of the Year and still be like Final Four MOP? Absolutely. Yep. And that is the standard over here. Fuck that little award. No shade. Fuck that award. There's bigger fish to fry. And it just, it speaks to like when people became fans and shit like that, of course, you know what I'm saying? But like, we'll be all right if Michaela Blakes takes that home. We are trying to win a national championship. Yeah. And Sarah can absolutely be the best player on the floor if we get that done.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And again, to me,
like Stewie did not win National Freshman of the Year.
Yeah.
When we run down her resume, does anybody care?
I'm going to start putting an asterisk on it now.
Does anyone care? Like, come on. We're losing sight of what really matters.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And also, we had talked about it a little bit, but like, once you start getting into like the hypotheticals of like, well, Sarah was on Vanderbilt and had less talent.
I'm going to stop right there.
Yep. you save your breath. Save your breath on the hypotheticals, like when you get to that point. But yeah, Michaela's been fantastic. So they'll play at Vanderbilt. They play at Ole Miss, and then they host Kentucky. So like decent opponent, like so like not.
I mean,
like,
that's 3 ranked teams.
Yeah, on the verge. So Kentucky's the only one technically ranked right now.
Oh, okay.
But yes, but Vanderbilt and Ole Miss have been in and out the last however long. I mean, really the entire season especially for Ole Miss. Really,
and they're going to be trying to win those games as well.
Absolutely. So like this, it's not like an easy ending to the season. And then obviously once you get to the SEC tournament, I mean, right now you're looking at a coin flip for the number 1 seed. And if you lose that coin flip, you're probably playing LSU and before you even get to the championship, and then you run it back, presumably, if all the top seeds go, like you're running back against Texas in the championship game. So like you're going to get tested like very, very soon. If not if it's not you can't get caught slipping in the regular season. But then you go against the big dogs are back, like once you get to the SEC tournament. So genuinely very interested in how South Carolina finishes this season.